Most often, what people do when they finally figure out their type is that they simply ignore all their flaws and only focus on the positive aspects of their type. This is not the purpose of Enneagram. What Enneagram wants you to do is to be true to yourself. What most people don't know about Enneagram is that it is a very negative theory. What I mean by that is that Enneagram, as it was originally intended by its founder Ichazo, is a theory that points out your flaws. It intends to inform you how flawed your perception is and what you need to do to overcome what's holding you back. Because at their core, all types are defective. Either at a conscious or unconscious level, all types are lying to themselves. All types are putting on a front to hide their insecurities, a defense mechanism to protect ourselves from criticism. Sometimes we are aware of these defense styles, but most often these are unconscious. Although we say Enneagram describes 9 personalities, Enneagram describes 9 ways how people keep their ego intact. In this video, we'll be discussing the defense mechanism of each type. Although keep in mind, we are not limited to just one defense mechanism. We can use any of them. One of them is more closely associated with our type. Some of these may be uncomfortable to hear, so sit tight. Type 1. Reaction formation. Ones use reaction formation to avoid anger, that is direct anger, to maintain a self-image of being right. Reaction formation is a defense mechanism by which individuals recognize how they feel, but they choose to behave in the opposite manner of their instincts. One's active inner critic dictates what is acceptable based on social norms, expectations, and moral principles. Any behavior, feeling, or thought that one's think is unacceptable is subdued, and one's replace them with acceptable behavior. These unreleased emotions ultimately take the form of anger and irritability towards others who are not doing the same, which can cause ones to lash out at other people. Type 2. Repression. 2s use repression of personal needs and feelings to avoid being needy and to maintain a self-image of being helpful. Unsavory thoughts, painful memories, or irrational beliefs can upset 2s. Instead of facing them, 2s may unconsciously choose to hide them in hopes of forgetting about them entirely. That does not mean, however, that these feelings disappear forever. They may influence behaviors and they may even impact future relationships. You just may not realize the impact this defense mechanism is having. 2s want to be helpful and want others to rely on them, and at the same time, they don't want to be dependent on other people because that may make them appear needy. So this way, 2s are very contradicting people who always advise others to be open about their feelings, and yet they rarely ever share their own true private feelings. I understand other people more than I understand myself. Rings true for this type. Type 3. Identification. 3s use identification to avoid failure and maintain a self-image of being successful. Identification is the defense mechanism of taking on the characteristics of someone you admire to escape the feeling of incompetence and inadequacy. 3s who are unaware of this construct an image for the public that will get them the same reaction they give to those they admire. For this reason, it becomes complicated for them to untangle who they really are from this image. Type 4. Introjection. 4s use introjection to avoid ordinariness and maintain a self-image of being authentic. In introjection, instead of repelling critical information and negative experiences that can cause a person anxiety or pain, individuals introject the information, meaning they fully absorb, internalize, and incorporate them into their sense of self. In layman language, instead of working on their issues and shortcomings, 4s make them a part of their identity to cope with the feeling of rejection and guilt. This may sound harsh, but it's not that 4s are naturally unique. They unconsciously want to be unique to stand out, because claiming to be unique can help them avoid taking responsibility. Type 5 Isolation. Fives use isolation to avoid emptiness and maintain a self image of being knowledgeable. Isolation occurs in fives as a way for them to avoid feeling overwhelmed and empty. Isolation here doesn't just mean physical isolation, but also emotional isolation. Fives isolate themselves by retreating into their minds and cutting themselves off from others as well as their own feelings. In their isolated state, fives hoard resources to take action but are unable to because coming out of their shell and facing the world may potentially break their facade of being able to solve any problem. Type 6 Projection. Sixes use projection to avoid personal rejection and to maintain a self image of being loyal. Projection is attributing one's own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, and behavior to someone else. For example, if you have a strong dislike for someone, you might instead believe that they do not like you. While the projection may be positive, negative, or neutral, it occurs when the individuals who are projecting perceive the projected attributes as difficult to acknowledge or threatening to believe about themselves. Although sixes use projection as a way to create some certainty and thus reduce their anxiety in uncertain or potentially dangerous situations, these projections, particularly if they are negative in nature, ironically raise the sixes anxiety level. Type 7 Rationalization. Sevens use rationalization to avoid suffering and to maintain a self image of being okay. Rationalization is justifying a disturbing or unacceptable thought or behavior by forming a pseudo logical explanation to think or feel that way. It is simply the act of attempting to justify an inappropriate behavior or an attitude in a way that entirely avoids or hides their original motivations and intentions. Being part of the head triad, deep down, sevens are troubled by anxiety. They choose to battle this anxiety with optimism. When seven rationalize, they do so by positive reframing, justifying their behavior by explaining it in highly positive terms. Sevens use reframing to avoid pain, discomfort, sadness, guilt, and anxiety, as well as to avoid taking responsibility for their reckless actions. Rationalization may be harmful on paper, but constant self deception can lead to even more anxiety long term. Like telling yourself that at the end of the day, your constant procrastination is ultimately a good thing. Type 8 Denial. Eights use denial to avoid vulnerability and to maintain a self image of being strong. Denial is a defense mechanism by which individuals unconsciously deny something that makes them feel anxious by rejecting its very existence. Denial is the refusal to perceive that painful facts exist. Eights block external events or circumstances from their mind so that they don't have to deal with the emotional impact. Type 9 Narcotization. Nines use narcotization to avoid conflict and to maintain a self image of being comfortable or harmonious. Narcotization is a psychological defense mechanism in which individuals unconsciously numb themselves to avoid something that feels too large, complex, difficult, or uncomfortable to handle. Nines narcotize and distract themselves by engaging in activities that are familiar to them, which require very little attention and provide comfort. For example, continuous pleasure reading of books by the same author or within the same genre, going for a walk or a bike ride, engaging in frequent or extended casual conversations, or continuously changing channels on the TV, binge watching movies and web series with the similar lead characters, and when disrupted, they feel agitated, irritated, or even disoriented. Here is a table you can screenshot for quick reading. That's all. Thank you.